Welcome in, y'all. We have our Week 12 NFL picks today. Can't believe it's already Week 12. Here's my record on the year, 92-72 against the spread, so doing really, really good there. And we're going to kick this thing off with Thursday night football. Buffalo visiting Houston, which it does sound like C.J. Stroud will be out for the Texans, so making this pick with that in mind. Houston... that is a mistype there at the bottom. Buffalo is favored by 5.5 in this one, not Houston. So Buffalo on the road here with a 5-point favorite, 5.5. And they're coming off a big home win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They looked really good in that game, especially offensively. This Bills team has kind of been up and down. They've had more highs than lows this season, but they've had a couple head scratchers, the loss in Atlanta, the loss in Miami. They've just had some games. They've been a little shaky. The Texans on the flip side, they started the season 0-3. They're on a 5-2 run since then. They haven't looked necessarily dominant by any means, but they've gotten some good wins along the way. And this past week with Davis Mills, they did survive the Tennessee Titans and scratch out a 3-point win in that one. So for this game here, Stroud is out, which really stinks because this is one the Texans would really love to have, right, if they want to push for the playoffs. And it's a really big game for them. It's a big game for both teams, though. Buffalo still trailing New England for the division, so they got to start winning more games. And, this is one, if Stroud's in, there's a chance I would pick the Texans to win this thing. But with him out, I can't trust the Texans to win it, but I do like Houston to cover. I think the very, very good Texans defense could give the Bills some issues. The Bills have struggled at times this year, like I've said, so I'm curious to see how Texans elite defense does. The Texans do need to be able to move the ball, though, with Mills, so that could be a potential concern. And, this is one the Bills could blow them out, right? But I think the Texans defense keeps it close enough. We have a pretty fun Thursday night game. So give me the Bills to win and Texans to cover on Thursday. But next up, let's talk about a very fun Sunday slate, a very good noon game, 1 o'clock Eastern game here. You have the Colts at 8-2 visiting the 5-5 Kansas City Chiefs. And this is a spot for the Chiefs that if they were to lose this game, things look a little grim. They're 5-5, so they're far from out of it. Only a game back of the playoffs at the moment. And, I feel like we're still waiting for them to figure it out. Maybe this is the game, but man, I thought last week was going to be the time they turned it on coming out of a bye, and they just didn't. So, could they miss the playoffs this season? It's certainly a possibility. But this game is going to decide a lot of that. So the Colts coming off a bye week after a win in Atlanta. After an amazing start to the season, the Colts have faltered a little bit. They got beat up a little by Pittsburgh. They turned the ball over 6 times, and then they played Atlanta overseas, and they won the game in overtime, but it was shaky there for a while. It was in doubt for a lot of that game. But a good job to come out of there with the win. I still think the Colts are a really good team and will probably have a top 2 or 3 seed in the playoffs. But this is one of those games here. It's a difficult one. Chiefs are favored by 3.5, and it feels like I keep waiting on the Chiefs to now they're going to step it up but they're just not. So it's hard to trust them right now, which is a weird thing to say about the Chiefs. And the Colts, on the other hand, though. Just the way they looked the last couple games wasn't great. It wasn't, horrendous by any means. I mean, the 6 turnovers against Pittsburgh was horrendous. But they've been all right. So with that being said, I think this thing stays close, right? I think Indy's going to cover that 3.5, but I will take the Chiefs to come out of there with a win. I don't feel great about it either way. This could be a game the Chiefs really step it up and, pedal down, but we'll see. We're still waiting on that from them after a couple rough weeks. Maybe they bounce back here. But this should be a fun game, close scoring. So like I said, Colts to cover, Chiefs to win. I think that'll be a fun one on Sunday. Then our next one is going to be the Jets visiting the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, they just keep chugging along, right? They keep getting wins. It was a little questionable in Cleveland last week up until late in the game. But the 4th and 1, 35-yard rushing touchdown by Mark Andrews was the difference in that one. The Jets are coming off a Thursday night game, so a bit more rest. But the offense still hasn't been great for the Jets. They still can't pass the ball. The Jets have lost 8 games this year. 5 of those have been by 1 score, some of them to decent teams. So I don't want to immediately write this thing off as a Ravens cover, because that's a big number, Ravens by 13. But at the same time, Ravens are rolling a little bit. Jets are the Jets, and they're continuing to have their issues. I'm going to take the Ravens to win. I'm going to take the Ravens to cover. I don't feel great about the cover. I'm a little concerned whether it's late or not. I don't know. But it's hard to pick the Jets in any fashion at this point with the way they're playing football. So Ravens in both facets there. Then we'll move on over to this one, Pittsburgh at Chicago. And, this is one, I've said it in the past. I do make updates if, new news comes out later in the week, like on the community channel post here on YouTube, if you go to my channel. And this is one of those that might be the case because Rodgers is right now, from when I'm recording this, is 50-50 on if he's going to play. I'm making this pick assuming he's injured but plays. Playing through, that fractured hand. It's going to affect him a little bit, but I think he's going to find his way out there. So that's how I'm making this pick, just making that clear. So Pittsburgh at Chicago here. Both teams, I think this is a very interesting one. One of those stats, I don't know how you could possibly find it, but when is the last time you had 2 division leaders playing each other this late in the season, but neither of the teams leading their division are favored to win their division? The Steelers, the Ravens are fairly heavily favored to win that division. And Chicago, I think, I'd have to double check, but I think both Detroit and Green Bay have better odds to win the division than them. So kind of a weird scenario here with division leaders, but it doesn't really feel like it. It feels like these are 2 teams that were like, yeah, okay, they have good records, but, I don't know how good they really are. So, I guess maybe we'll find out in this one. And if Rodgers plays in this one, you know what? Go ahead and give me the Steelers to win. Give me the Steelers to win this football game. I don't trust either of these teams, to be completely honest. But who I do trust to some extent is Aaron Rodgers. I think it'll be a close game. I think it could be a tight game. And if it came down to a game-winning drive, I trust Rodgers a lot more than Caleb Williams right now. Caleb Williams has had a few game-winning drives recently, so he's very capable, but it's not like he's playing stellar football from first to fourth quarter, Neither is Rodgers necessarily. I guess I trust the Steelers a bit more, but this is a weird one, man. I'm curious what the line will move to when Rodgers is either ruled in or out. I'd be shocked if it stayed at 3 one way or the other, but I will take Pittsburgh to cover and to win in the Windy City. But again, check on my channel later in the week. That pick might change depending on the injury statuses. Then we'll move on to New England visiting Cincinnati. And, Cincinnati hung around last week against Pittsburgh. They really did. They were, kind of in the game late. And their chances are kind of grim now. They're slim. If they ran the table, I think they'd be in the playoffs. But I just don't know they can do it because it starts here. Because there's a chance Burrow could be back next week for Thanksgiving, I've heard. I haven't heard an update on that, but that was the original talks. If they were to somehow win this game and then get Burrow back, the odds are still probably beyond slim considering they play Baltimore twice, Buffalo, they have some tough games in there. But if they ran the table, they'd be in. So, I don't know. But the morale's so low with this team. Morale's really high for New England right now. The line's up at 8.5 in this one in favor of the Patriots. Jamar Chase is out for this one. He was suspended for spitting on Jalen Ramsey. And, man, I don't feel good about it. But I'm going to actually take Cincy to cover. I like New England to win. I definitely think the Patriots get in there and win this game. But you can't sleep too much here. Cincinnati, despite their record, has been in a lot of games, and they have a very prolific offense. New England has a good defense, especially against the run, but Cincinnati doesn't, running the ball isn't really their thing. It's more dicing you up through the air. I know Chase is out, so that, complicates things. But I'll take Cincinnati in a narrow cover. I think New England does win this game, move to 10-2. But, maybe it could be a sneaky one there. You never know. Then our next game features the 7-3 Seahawks, looking for a nice little bounce back game here on the road against a very, very bad Tennessee Titans team. Titans are 1-9. Not too many bright spots for them on the season, right? Especially offensively. The defense has been decent. It's kept them in a couple of the games, but it's just not a very good team. Seattle, tough loss. Sam Darnold, saw ghosts last week, which, I've been scared of. I've been scared of that with Seattle. However, I do think this team is good enough and Darnold has matured enough that I think they can bounce back here in this one. I'm not too concerned about them, this week at all. I think Seattle goes in there, they play a nice, clean game, and they kind of just dominate it. Give me Seattle to win, and give me them to win big. I have them winning 30-10 over the Titans. I don't think it'll be that good of a game. There's always a chance after, a loss and a 4-interception performance, you start to just be shaky down the stretch, but I don't know. I think this is the perfect game to have coming off that tough performance because the Titans are a pretty easy team to have a get-right game against, and I think that's what we see here for Seattle in a big win. But then moving on to a more interesting game, albeit slightly, we have Minnesota visiting Green Bay. Vikings now sitting at 4-6. Quarterback performance has been poor, and with 6 losses already, their playoff hopes are about toast, right? Like they're probably not making the playoffs. I think I can pretty safely say that. Morale is pretty low right now, and they're on the road against a very good, very good on paper Packers team. They haven't really played up to their potential outside of the first couple weeks this season. But Green Bay is just the better team here. They're favored by 6.5, and I agree with that. I do keep in mind that Minnesota did go into Detroit and win just a couple weeks ago. So this Minnesota team, roster-wise, talent-wise, they're capable of beating some decent teams, pulling a rabbit out of a hat, but I just don't think this is the week. I think the Packers win this game. I think they cover 6.5 as well. I think I have this one 24-13. I don't think it's one where, the Packers are in too much stress. I don't think they ever extend the lead massively, but I think they're pretty comfortably ahead for a lot of this one. But again, you never know. The Packers have just oddly struggled at times this year. So maybe this is another one of those, but right now I'm not thinking so. But then moving on here, again, this is another one. You can check my channel, which it could have some injury updates because Jackson Dart's status is still TBD. But it's the Lions hosting the Giants. Lions currently 10.5-point favorites. I really don't know who's starting in this one. I guess odds are it's Jameis right now, but Jackson Dart seems to be progressing in the right direction. If he plays, it definitely changes things a little bit because this team's a lot better with him. But the Giants played pretty well with Jameis last week. They took the Packers down to the wire, gave them a good game there. Detroit had a tough loss in Philly, just couldn't get the offense going, for the Lions. But one thing I want to bring up, I think the Lions have won either 12 or 13 in a row coming off of a loss under Dan Campbell. And the 3 games where they had a loss this year and then played the next week, the three games they played next, they won by 31 points, then 15 points, then 22 points. That is massive numbers. Not saying they were playing the toughest of tough opponents. I mean, one of them was against the Bucs, though, a good team. But I think that's certainly something to consider. This Lions team is very, very good off of a loss. And they're at home in the Dome. If Dart plays, it definitely complicates things. Like I said, I might have an update on that pick. But right now, give me the Lions to win. Give me the Lions to win big. I have it 34-20 in this one. I think the Giants can put up some points. But I just think the Lions they're a good bounce-back team. They're a good bounce-back team, and I like them to win this one. So they would jump back up to 7-4. Then moving on to one of the first late games, we have Jacksonville visiting Arizona. Now, this is an interesting one. Jacksonville is favored by 2.5 here on the road. Jacksonville got a huge home win against the Chargers last week, and they looked really good. A dominating ground game was really the highlight there, and of course, stellar defensive play holding the Chargers back. And the Cardinals, they're better than their record shows. I keep saying it, but they just keep falling flat. These last 2 weeks have been rough for them. They've been beaten up by the NFC West opponents. I'm going to take Jacksonville to win and cover in this one, but, I don't feel amazing about it just because you just got to be careful with this one. Jacksonville's only favored by 2.5. It feels like one where anyone that sees this is probably picking Jacksonville, and that can be a dangerous thing sometimes. So the Cardinals absolutely have the talent and the ability to win this game against Jaguars, right? Jaguars still haven't gotten the passing offense going. So that's definitely a concern. But right now, the Jags are they're winning games, and the Cardinals are finding ways to lose them. So I'm going to take the Jaguars to win and cover on the road, but I think it should be a close and a good game. Then moving on, we have this one, Cleveland at Vegas. I won't spend too much time on it. Not a very interesting game. Raiders favored by 3.5. And it's a weird one. Dylan Gabriel sounds like he is out. From what we saw from Sanders last week, it's hard to trust the Browns at all, but the Browns still have that really good defense. The Raiders just seem to be struggling right now, especially offensively. Well, and defensively, they got killed against the Cowboys a little bit too. I'm a little split in this one. I'll take the Raiders to win. I think they can get the job done at home, but I'll take the Browns to cover 3.5. Feels a little bit like bait there, but I'm going to take it. I think the Browns defense can keep them in it. I don't trust this Raiders team right now, but they are the better team, I think. So I do think the Raiders get the win. Then another not very interesting game. Again, I'll be fairly quick on this one. Atlanta visits New Orleans. New Orleans has jumped out to a 2.5-point favorite. I think this is the Saints' first game this season being favored. So congratulations to the New Orleans Saints for being favored in a football game. The Falcons, sounds like Drake London's going to be out. Penix is definitely out, so it's the Kirk Cousins show. And, the line has reflected that, jumped on over to the Saints. Saints' morale is high, right? They got a win in Carolina. Then they had a nice little bye week. They got to rest up, get their spirits high. So stuff is definitely looking in the Saints' favor here. But, the Falcons are the more talented team. I know London's out, but, they still have weapons on offense. They still have Bijan. Kirk Cousins is still a serviceable quarterback. Penix hasn't necessarily been that great this season anyways. So I think this is one I'm going to take the Falcons to win on the road. Really, I think the only reason they don't is, morale. Sometimes morale just gets so low. The season hasn't gone the way they wanted. They have injuries that they kind of give up a little bit. And, that's really hard to predict, right? Because some teams can bounce back, respond, still play good football. Some teams can't. It's a lot about locker room culture, and we just don't know what that's like. But really, the way these two teams match up, I think the Falcons are going to be able to sneak out a close road victory in the Big Easy there. Then we'll move on to the best late afternoon game. It's 4:25 Eastern. It's the Eagles rocking their Kelly Greens on the road, visiting the Dallas Cowboys. These two teams met in the season opener on that Thursday night. I believe the final score was 24-20 in favor of the Eagles. That was a good game. Eagles are favored by 3.5 in this one on the road. Eagles coming off that nice Sunday night victory. The Eagles keep finding ways to win close games against very good teams. But, the Eagles have just not looked impressive. So it's really hard. It's really hard. I talked about this, I think, in my last video, where it's really weird to get a feel for a team that you watch them, the eye test. You're watching them on TV and you're like, they don't look that good. And then you just look at week after week of them beating good opponents, and it's like, well, something's working, right? So interesting there for the Eagles. Cowboys are like a hit or miss, right? The Cowboys are either about to drop 40 on you, or they're about to have just one of the worst performances on both offense and defense that you've seen on the week. And you never know exactly which one you're going to get. The defense was certainly better this week. I know they made some additions. That definitely helps. And this is one this week. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to take the Cowboys to win this game at home. Not only cover, but win the game against the Eagles. I think the Cowboys at home play pretty good football. I think the Eagles have had a lot of close wins. I think they're an amazing team, probably the current favorite to come out of the NFC. But, eventually one of these close games is going to get them. And the Cowboys almost had them in week 1 this year. So I think the Cowboys are going to sneak out a little win at home here and maybe rejoin the playoff race. I really doubt the Cowboys make the playoffs. They have a tough schedule. They have this one, then they have the Chiefs on Thanksgiving. But you never know. We will see an upset pick there for me. But then moving on to Sunday Night Football, Tampa Bay visiting Los Angeles. And, the first time I saw this line, I was a little shocked, right? Rams by 6.5 seemed like a lot of points. So I definitely spent some time looking into this one, just trying to get a good read for it because, that's a pretty big number. But some things I'd like to point out. I talked about it in my video last week, and I thought it was interesting. I picked the Bills to cover against the Bucs, which they did. I was like, man, the Bucs coming off losses. I feel like Baker and the attitude there, I feel like they know how to rebound. But I looked back at the last 2 years with the Bucs and Baker, and I know situations are different, injuries, each year, whatnot. But they've had like 4+ game losing streaks right around this point in the season, each of the last 2 years. They're on a 2-game losing streak right now. So it seems like a routine. Like they start decent, have a little dip in the middle, and then they finish strong. This is a tough spot for them, coming off 2 straight losses, 2 straight road games here. They're in LA, cross country. Rams coming off a big win. Sometimes coming off a big win like they had against Seattle can hurt a team, but I think at home here the Rams are able to get it done, and I think they're going to cover. It really does worry me though. I have this one, I think 30-20 is the final score. I think the Rams offense could absolutely run up the score here. The real question is how much can the Rams stop the Bucs from scoring, because the Bucs have been pretty good offensively as well this season. So we'll see there. I could see a late cover from Tampa Bay, but I'll ride with the Rams in this one. But I still think it'll be a fairly good game. Like I think it'll be a fun Sunday night matchup. I think we'll see some points. I think it'll be a good time. Then moving on to Monday Night Football, we have Carolina at San Fran. Man, 2 teams with winning records. Look at the Panthers go. I mean, you love to see it. I'm happy for teams who haven't been super great and are doing well. It is interesting, though. I've never seen a team with a winning record at this point in the season that analytics hate so much. And I'm not saying I disagree. I mean, the eye test, the Panthers have been not good for a lot of their games this year, even some of their wins. But I mean, somehow they found a way. They have a winning record here. The Niners, things looked rough coming off that loss to the Rams. They kind of got blown out at home, but then they've rebounded in a big way last week. Brock Purdy came back and against the Cardinals, and he looked good. He didn't look rusty. He came right in, was playing good football, and I feel like I'm back in on the Niners. I think hope is renewed for them. Now, for this one, it's a big line. San Fran by 7. And, man, it's a weird one. I couldn't decide on this one because I'm sitting here and I'm like, I think the Niners could win this game by 30 points. And then I also think there's a weird way that the Panthers could sneak one out. Honestly, I feel similar to this one as I do the Sunday night game, where it feels like, I think the home team could be a blowout, but I also think, there's a sneaky chance that road team could come in there. I am going to take the Niners to win this one. I just think they're looking too good right now, coming off that game with Purdy back. I'm going to take them to win, but I'm going to take Carolina to keep it within 7 points. I have them losing by 6 here. You never know what you're going to get with Carolina. Some games they just completely lay an egg. Some games they play very well. Sometimes they have a home loss to the Saints, and sometimes they have a road win against the Packers. So who knows? Who knows, honestly. But those are my picks for this week in the NFL. Hard to believe it's already week 12. Let me know where you disagree, what your picks are. I always love to hear it. And we're hoping for another great week of football, and I'll have those best picks out on Friday.